Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel.
Today, we're journeying back in time to the wild, untamed heart of America, exploring the lives of the pioneers who dared to venture west.
Imagine leaving everything you've ever known behind. Packing your life into a covered wagon and heading into a vast, unknown wilderness. This wasn't just a trip. It was a gamble for a new life, a dream of land and opportunity. But this dream came with a heavy price, and the journey was anything but easy. The pioneers of the 18th and 19th centuries were some of the toughest people in history. They weren't just moving to a new town. They were stepping into a world that hadn't been mapped, a world ruled by nature. Their daily lives were a battle for survival against forces that were completely out of their control. Blistering summer heat would bake the plains, turning the earth to dust. Then, without warning, that heat could give way to violent thunderstorms, flash floods, and even tornadoes that could tear a wagon train apart in minutes. And the winters. The winters were brutal. Imagine being caught in the Rocky Mountains when the first snows fall. We're talking about blizzards that could bury your wagon completely. Temperatures so low that frostbite was a constant, deadly threat. Many pioneer diaries are filled with heartbreaking accounts of families huddling together, rationing their meager food supplies, just praying to see the spring. Diseases like cholera, dysentery, and smallpox swept through wagon trains, often with devastating consequences, far from any doctor or medicine. It was a life lived on the very edge. But perhaps the most immediate and terrifying danger came from the original inhabitants of these lands, the wildlife. The American West was home to some of the most formidable creatures on the continent. Grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, and venomous rattlesnakes were not just part of the scenery. They were a daily threat to life and limb. When you think of pioneers and wildlife, one story stands above all others. A tale of survival so incredible, it's become a legend. I'm talking about the story of Hugh Glass. In 1823, Glass was part of a fur-trapping expedition in what is now South Dakota. He was an experienced frontiersman, a man who knew the wilderness. But even he wasn't prepared for what happened next. While scouting ahead of his group, Glass stumbled upon a grizzly bear with her 2 cubs. What followed was a brutal, terrifying attack. The grizzly, protective of her young, mauled Glass with unimaginable force. It bit into his scalp, slashed his face, punctured his throat, and broke his leg. His companions heard his screams and rushed to help, eventually managing to kill the bear. But when they looked at Glass, they saw a man who was as good as dead. His wounds were so severe that survival seemed impossible. The expedition leader, knowing they couldn't carry him and risk being slowed down in hostile territory, made a difficult choice. He offered a bonus to 2 men, Jim Bridger and John Fitzgerald, to stay behind and bury Glass once he inevitably passed away. For days, they waited, but Hugh Glass clung to life, fearing an attack by the Arikara tribe and convinced Glass would die any minute. Fitzgerald and Bridger made a fateful decision. They took his rifle, his knife, and all his equipment, his very tools for survival, and abandoned him, leaving him for dead in a shallow grave. They later reported to their party that Glass had died, but Hugh Glass did not die. When he regained consciousness, he was alone, unarmed, and horrifically injured. He had a broken leg, deep gashes all over his body, and his back was stripped to the bone, exposing his ribs. Most people would have given up. Most people would have accepted their fate. But not Hugh Glass, fueled by an unbelievable will to live and a burning desire for revenge against the men who left him. He began to crawl. His journey is one of the most astonishing feats of human endurance ever recorded. He set his own broken leg. To prevent gangrene, he allowed maggots to eat the dead flesh from his wounds. Unable to walk, he crawled and dragged his broken body south, navigating by the sun and stars. He survived on whatever he could find, wild berries, roots, and even the carcass of a buffalo that had been killed by wolves. For 6 weeks, Hugh Glass crawled over 200 miles across the unforgiving wilderness, driven by sheer grit and determination. Eventually, he reached Fort Kiowa, a remote outpost. The men there were stunned to see this wraith-like figure appear out of the wilderness. He had literally come back from the dead. His stories spread like wildfire, cementing his status as a frontier legend. It is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure in the face of impossible odds. The tale of Hugh Glass, while extreme, highlights a fundamental truth about pioneer life. You had to become a part of the wilderness to survive it. This wasn't just about avoiding danger. It was about actively engaging with the natural world. Survival was a skill, and pioneers had to become masters of it. Hunting was not a sport. It was a necessity. They learned to track deer, hunt buffalo for meat and hides, and trap smaller animals for food and fur. A successful hunt meant the difference between a full belly and starvation. They also had to become expert defenders. Every pioneer knew how to use a rifle, not just for hunting, but for protecting their families and livestock from predators like wolves and mountain lions that saw their camps as an easy meal. Children learned from a young age to be aware of their surroundings, to recognize the signs of a rattlesnake, to know which areas to avoid. It was a constant state of vigilance. Building shelter was another crucial skill. Beyond the covered wagon, which was only a temporary home, they needed to construct sturdy shelters that could withstand the elements. This often started with a simple lean-to or a sod house, built from blocks of prairie turf. Later, they would build log cabins, felling trees and shaping them with hand tools. Every structure was a testament to their ingenuity and their ability to use the resources the land provided. They had to know which trees made the best timber, how to mix mud and grass to seal the gaps, and how to build a fireplace that wouldn't burn the whole cabin down. Think about it. Almost everything they needed, they had to find, hunt, or build themselves. They were blacksmiths, carpenters, farmers, hunters, and doctors, all rolled into one. They learned from trial and error. They learned from Native American tribes they encountered, and they passed this hard-won knowledge down through generations. The life of a pioneer was a grand and perilous adventure, a constant, raw interaction between humanity and the wild. It was a life that demanded courage, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit. The stories of these men and women are more than just historical accounts. They are the foundation of the American identity. They remind us of the incredible sacrifices made by those who came before us, and the untamable spirit that pushed them westward into the great unknown. Their legacy is etched into the very landscape of the country. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to explore. Until next time, stay curious.